Hello and welcome to this weekend's Irish Independent GAA preview. I'm Will Slattery and I'm delighted to be joined by Conor McKeown. Conor, how are you?
All right, Will, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. We have football and hurling this weekend. Football Saturday, hurling Sunday. We'll start with the football. The much maligned round robin structure got a shot in the arm last weekend with Dublin Galway. The fixture list not as appetising maybe on paper. We have two Ulster derbies rather, Armagh, Derry and Donegal, Tyrone. They're probably the two big games on Saturday.
They are like Cork and Meath will be a big game, but it doesn't feel like it now. But obviously, like whoever wins that will be in the All Ireland.
Famous rivals as well.
Famous rivalry if you're trying to dig it up. it's a funny dynamic with these group stages. You don't realise what the story is until after it has been decided who's on the back foot early on. You know, like Cavan Mayo last weekend didn't feel like it was going to be a big story and became one of the biggest stories out of the weekend. So it's the same thing, you know, like if Donegal were to be on the back foot after losing to Tyrone this weekend, you know, that would be a far bigger story than it currently looks anyway from this remove. And it's the same with Derry and Armagh. That group has been kind of turned a small bit on its head by Dublin winning last weekend. So I have a weird sense with this year's round robin that because it's the last one and we voted it out because it didn't really work very well.
It'll be great.
It's going to work really well.
And the Armagh Derry game is not on TV, I don't think.
No.
Which gives me big Cork Donegal last year vibes, the untelevised match. It's like there's a Pruder film, people studying. Like there was one goal that some journalist took on their phone, and that was the basis of everyone's coverage. So I feel like there's like a potential upset there. Like, and Derry are such a fascinating team. Conn Darty, our colleague, is probably within earshot. His ears are probably pricking up at their engine, but like their fall from grace. Is there any sense that they could spring a surprise?
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will in one of the games, but I just can't quite figure out which one it is. That's kind of the issue here. And it's a bit like, you know, you look at Galway winning the Connacht Championship and they look, you know, in a group then with three teams, they're going to qualify. And you're saying, well, they're one of the All-Ireland favourites. They're definitely going to get out of a 4-team group. But like they've lost one game now and they're going to be away to Armagh. So you kind of...
Away to Derry.
Away to Derry,
yeah.
Sorry. And then they're neutral against Armagh. So there's like... They don't have an easy fixture that are left here. And if Derry were to do something this weekend, even if they weren't quite going to win it, it would really throw the cat among the pigeons. So it's almost like the games themselves in isolation, you know, maybe it's hard to kind of get too carried away with it, but it's what it means for the other teams in the group that actually makes it more interesting.
Yeah, and just in Tyrone, it feels like we haven't seen them in a while. The last time we saw them, it was in that narrow defeat to Armagh, where they, you know, gave as good as Armagh did. It came down to the last kick of the game, and like there's always, it feels like a sense of, you know, with the under-20s doing well as well, that there's something building there. Albeit their senior performances have been fairly abject since they won the All Ireland. Any kick in them, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, whether it's this year or next year, I think they're going to be back as an All Ireland force. Really, the argument for them being an All Ireland force this year is that it's hard to make out what level that All Ireland kind of force is at.
And Derek Canavan.
And Derek Canavan and Rory Canavan as well. Like they have an incredible habit of producing really good inside forwards. And there's a couple of serious inside forwards in that current under-20 team in the All Ireland final as well. So they're a county in a broader sense that has really got its act together in terms of how they produce talent, how they harness it. It's just really about putting it all together. And honestly, like with Malachy O'Rourke as manager, I couldn't rule them out of winning any game that they're played in this year. So, you know, the first round of these round robin series, and this is the second weekend of the first round, if you know what I mean, they're nearly a kind of an exploratory round. We'll know all we need to know after this one. And I think those stories would be much clearer and more compelling by, you know, Monday morning.
Do you think, I feel like I'm finding myself hating the structure less this year, and I'm wondering if that's because of the new rules and the injection of kind of excitement from that?
I've been at very few games I could say were poor this year, just from personal experience, and I know it's only anecdotal. But even watching the Dublin Galway game, say last Saturday, it's so hard to take the oxygen out of a match now. It's so hard to defend the lead, kill time, be cynical. And of all the things, you can talk about the 2-point rule, you can talk about, you know, the free tap and go, free solo and go, but the rules that were sort of designed to stop teams just basically sucking the oxygen out of a game, the absence of them has made every game that's even marginally close really, really compelling. You know, like Cavan were waltzing to an 8-point win over Mayo last week, and Mayo got in for 1-1 at the very end and made a game out of a game they were never really in. And that's because you can't hold on to the ball, you can't go backwards to the goalkeeper, you can't kill time, you can't stay down, you can't stop the opposition from taking the quick free. I think like a rising tide lifts all boats. I think you're right in saying that. The provincial championships okay, we got a couple of shocks that we don't usually get, and that added to them as a kind of an overall package, and how watchable and how enjoyable they were. But I think by the same token, the rules played a part there, and they are playing a part in this round robin series too.
It's the first time in years I've looked at fixture lists and actually genuinely been enthused to sit down and watch football matches. Honestly, like the last couple of weeks, like just I'm not sure if that's. I think it's mostly because of the new rules.
Yeah, I would argue that it is too. There is a sense maybe that, like, if you're to just play devil's advocate and be really nitpicky, you could say that a lot of games look similar. Like, there's no difference in terms of styles. Teams set up exactly how they all set up. Everybody defends with 11 players and they defend behind the arc. But that had happened anyway. You know, it just means that the
vibe, state of mind, it's an intangible.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna like what's gonna happen is the more teams, you know, like managers are so driven now by numbers and statistics, and they don't have very many of them because this is a new sport effectively that started. So the sample size is tiny, but I think the longer we go on, the more variation we'll see.
And as much as Jim Gavin is a man who lives by kind of measurables, there's kind of like it's just like a feeling around it as well, you know, that I think people are. I think there's an intangible quality to that as well.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. Like, even if you just take that game in isolation last week, Dublin and Galway, like Dublin were ahead, and then Greg McEneedy got a ball in the Galway half of the pitch and had to keep going forward, and he got called for steps, and then he pulled the Galway player back. The free was brought up 50 metres. Galway got their equaliser, and then we had this big drama over the last kick out. Then Dublin waited until the clock was gone and then got their shot away. So you kind of knew that was coming. Like, and there's a build up of anticipation around that last moment. So in tight games, these rules are unbelievable. I haven't been at too many blowouts. That's the only issue, is that a blowout can turn into a serious blowout. But we're probably past that point now in the championship where we're going to see too many of those.
Yeah. So that's football on Saturday, hurling on Sunday. We have the closing stages of the Leinster and Munster Hurling Championship, I suppose, up for debate. In Leinster, who will play Kilkenny? Galway and Dublin go head-to-head in Park, and then Munster, can Cork rebound from that absolute shellacking they took from Limerick last week? And it's one of those funny ones. They can either get to the Munster final or they're out. It's kind of hard. There is like a kind of a mathematical possibility they can qualify in third, but I think it's very, 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 very unlikely. You know, how do you expect Cork to bounce back?
I don't know exactly. I think all the talk about them being All-Ireland favourites, not that they would have sort of, you know, lost the run of themselves or anything like that, but they were definitely in that frame of mind. And when you get beaten like that, it must be a bit of a shock to the system. I mean, it must rank as one of Limerick's greatest performances. You know, you have to go back to maybe the 2021 All-Ireland final for something that was that complete. But you just wonder with Pat Ryan and the Cork management, when they break it down, you know, there's probably something quite elemental there in terms of their structure. Like, it wasn't a case of that they were blown out of it in every challenge, and, you know, it was almost like they kind of got their sums wrong nearly in how they set up and where they went at Limerick and how Limerick went at them. So I would expect them to win this weekend, is the honest answer, and I'd expect them still to be the second best team in Ireland.
In 2019, Tipperary beat Limerick pretty comprehensively in the final round robin game, and they played again in the Munster final, and Limerick beat Tip pretty comprehensively. So we have seen it in the recent past of that. And it's hard to know exactly how much Cork wanted it versus Limerick. Like, it was a bigger game for Limerick.
Yeah, it was a bigger game for Limerick. I just think the dynamic of the whole hurling picture has shifted again.
Yeah.
Limerick are back where we thought they were even this time last year, where they have been for 5 years. And do you know what? Just having been at the Tipperary game in the first round robin, that was the day that they brought Nicky Quaid back. That was the day that they tried Kyle Hayes at centre forward. That was the day that Shane O'Brien kind of got into the team permanently. Well, Will O'Donoghue, who played centre back. It kind of feels like that was the begin, and now they have locked into a shape and they've found their form. And it does feel like that between John Kiley and the overall management system, that they've kind of timed it really well this year, because they're finding form at just the right time, and their best form is still better than anybody else's. Yeah,
and they have a dead rubber against Clare as well. Our champions who were eliminated by dint of Limerick beating Cork last weekend. We'll finish up then with Leinster, Galway, Dublin in Park. Interestingly, Dublin are fairly decent underdogs. It's a good price. If you fancy Dublin getting over the line this weekend and they have a good record against Galway, you can get them at a good price. What's your sense of this one? I'm surprised. I thought it would be much closer.
Yeah, I was surprised too. Probably because I think Galway, it's you know, the perception is about Galway is that when they get it right, they're all Ireland contenders. Now they're probably not this year, whereas when Dublin get it right, they're not. But like last year, Dublin went down to to Salt Hill, and you know, I know David Burke got sent off, but they were well on top at that stage. It was Henry Shefflin's last game, and interesting, Micheál Donoghue was over the Dublin Hurlers at the time, which was a little bit of an awkward situation when David Burke, who was his All-Ireland winning captain, was sent off. But there's proper needle there. Like, don't be under any sort of, you know, people talk about a healthy respect and healthy rivalry. That's a proper rivalry, and Dublin have come out of it at least as often on top as Galway have, and generally it has been like a bad, like it has precipitated a bad fall for Galway. Even Micheál Donoghue's last game when he was Galway manager, when they were All-Ireland champions, was that night in Parnell Park, when the only result that could have knocked them out was them losing to Dublin and a draw in the game between Kilkenny and Wexford that was happening at the same time, and both of those things happened.
That was great.
Yeah, it was like, you know, and it was one of those nights where, you know, they invaded the pitch and it was getting dark and there was Dublin players held high. So look, I think for Dublin this year, they have to make a Leinster final and they have to perform in it. That would be the bottom line. There's a new manager and there's a lot of new players, but they're not an especially young team. That's maybe a misconception about them. They've been missing Donald Burke and they've a few injuries, but they hurled well enough against Kilkenny. Like, I thought the analysis on the Sunday game was very good about Dublin. Like, they conceded 5 goals, but the number of them that were just basic individual mistakes that come down to coaching or concentration, the sort of stuff that can be remedied in a short period of time. That was very, very prevalent. But on the balance of play, they kind of matched Kilkenny for hurling, you know, which was pretty good. And, you know, some of their forwards, it's funny, like when Micheál Donoghue and Matty Kenny were managers, it always felt like the Dublin attack revolved around finding Donald Burke somewhere around the 65 floating around. But without him, they've nearly become a more complete kind of a package. They're more of a goal threat, they've more pace. So it'd be interesting to see if he was available and dropped back into the team, what kind of effect that would have. But like, I think Dublin are a strong team this year. And like, I'd have it down as a 50-50 game. Like, at home I'd nearly just fancy Dublin, but like, it'll be fiery. There'll be a lot at stake.
That should be a good weekend. I'd like to thank Conor for joining me, and thanks to all you for watching. You can follow all the GA action across the weekend on independent.ie, and we will be back with you next week.